Welcome to the next episode of the Austin Bar Association's Council of Firsts. I'm your host, Amanda Arriaga, First Latina Bar President. This podcast is made possible by the Texas Bar Foundation. Today we talk to Judge Hilda Tagle, who has celebrated many firsts. She's a graduate of the University of Texas School of Law and in 1985 became the first Latina county court at law judge in Texas and the second Latina judge in the state of Texas. In 1998, she made history again with her appointment to the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Texas, Brownsville Division. She took senior status from that position in 2012. She was the founding chair of the Mexican-American Bar of the Coastal Bend and active in the Corpus Christi Bar Association and Hispanic Women's Network. She is a recipient of the Sarah T. Hughes Women Lawyers of Achievement Award. This judge is so generous that when I first met her, she bragged all about a friend of hers that she thought would be a great subject for this podcast. And as she was telling me about her life story, it did not occur to her that she would be a great subject as well. I'm so pleased to introduce Judge Hilda Tagle. Judge, thank you for being with us today.
It's a pleasure.
So you are one of the most educated people that we have had on this show. You have an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree, a master's in library of science, and a law degree. You had all of these options available to you, so why did you want to be a lawyer?
Well, you forgot to include the fact that I was a licensed cosmetologist when I was 16 years old.
Oh, I'm going to add that to the list.
Yes, that's right. Frankly, we didn't really have career counseling at Robstown High School. Especially if you were a Mexican American, the kids who would be considered Anglos or white were talking about going to UT Austin, and that was just not something that was within my my world. I just knew I wanted to go to college, so I was happy with Del Mar College, and then. But then I had to make a decision about where to continue with it for a bachelor's, and some friend of mine had gone to East Texas, and so I went to East Texas, and then I had to decide on a major. Like when I had dreamed about college before, I really hadn't thought about to do what, and so I had to select a major, and I thought, well, I like to read, I'll be a librarian. But I, again, screwing up by not getting a bachelor's degree in library science from a school that was accredited by the American Library Association. I couldn't get a job. Was a librarian. I had to be a paraprofessional. So that's when I went to get my master's. So it was just out of necessity because I couldn't get a job that I wanted with just a bachelor's. And so I got my master's from North Texas, which is an accredited school by the American Library Association. Well, I tried that for 4 years, and I realized, you can love to read and have it as an avocation. It doesn't have to be your vocation. So I was scrambling. I just was desperate about what to do. And I knew that medical school was out of the question. I used to have a hard time in science, even figuring out how to open my locker, the combination dial. It was always a mystery. So I thought, no, medical school is not an option. And I didn't know any lawyers, but I thought when I was working on my master's, I worked in the government documents, which had the Shepard citations and the reporter system. So, and that was always interesting. And so that's why I said, well, let me try it. So I was really just kind of not necessarily a shot in the dark, but I didn't really know what else to do other than maybe location manager for films, finding locations where to make movies. It was just a dream, I'm joking, of course. But, I didn't even know an attorney who could sign my declaration of intent to study law. There was a woman who worked with a volunteer at the library at Strike Jesuit, which is where I was working before enrolling at UT Law, but it was Mr. Pletcher. He signed off on my application, I guess it's called the Declaration of Intent to Study Law. And my family didn't know any lawyers or any of that. I had no idea, no idea whether it was really something I wanted. So I came to UT. I was admitted under the Affirmative Action Admissions Committee program that they had at the time. Thank goodness it existed because, I may not have made it otherwise. I don't know. There's no way to know, but I feel like I've done pretty good. So with my law degree, but anyway, so I I enrolled and I started, it was a summer fresh law, May of 75, which was just realizing today we were coming over here that it's been 48 years since I started law school at UT. And so I just thought, well, okay, if I don't like it, if I can't cut it, I can always go back to my job at Straight Jesuit. But about halfway through, well, I was tempted many times. You know, I had always been an honor student, and I didn't know what I was doing when I was here. You know, I just like I was all of a sudden dumb. And so Doug Chavez, the name partner Chavez firm in Corpus Christi, said, "Look, if you drop out, they're going to say, look what happens. We give them a chance, and they drop out." So, with the weight of the affirmative action admissions committee on my shoulders, I decided I better stick it out. And two, I thought, you know, I've shed too much blood, sweat, and tears to stop now. So I kept going. And, you know, the only honors grade I got in law school was research and writing, going back to my work as a librarian, actually. So it all kind of fit together, but I was still clueless about what I was going to do with a law degree. I just knew that I wanted to get I would have more options.
Well, it's interesting because you are so accomplished and you are far from the only person that felt dumb at UT Law School. I think everyone comes in hyper focused and they've always been the smartest one in the class. And then all of a sudden, that's who everybody is. So someone has to be the not the smartest person in the class. So you're in great company. For people that came into law school and immediately felt dumb.
Okay, well, thank you. 48 years later, thank you so much for that. I wish I'd heard that before.
Just know that, hey, kids, write in if you feel dumb at law school or if you felt dumb in law school, because I know we're not alone. So some people go to UT Law School, great law school, and decide to stay in Austin or go to a big city. And you decided to go back home and be an assistant city attorney in Corpus. Why was that the right path for you?
Okay, for me, it was the timing. First of all, I had left home in 1967. So in 75, I'd been gone, you know, all those years. But it was not so much that as my mother was diagnosed with cancer when it was 1973. And I have 4 younger brothers, and we had been kind of scattered. I'd, you know, left home to go to school in East Texas in Commerce, and then my master's at North Texas, and then I was in Houston. So my brothers were scattered, and I was the only one in the family and the only girl. I'm the oldest and the only girl in the family. I was the only one in a position to go home and help my mother. And my parents were, you know, she was going to Houston to MD Anderson for treatment. And so that was also a lot of pressure when I was in law school. You know, I started law school in 75, but she was diagnosed in 73. So, you know, she passed away ultimately January of 84. But that period of time was a very, you know, the familia, you have to be there. And so that's what motivated me to, you know, go work in Corpus Christi. But this is a really interesting story for me anyway. I don't know about your listeners, but I had been so busy with law school. I took the bar in July, but I didn't finish my credits until August. I hadn't applied. I had not gone to the placement office. I had not done anything about looking for a job. Kind of strange, right? Here I am. You know, I don't have a spouse to help support me while there's a transition. And so I was doing a clinic that involved working at legal aid, and I was there, and it was before voicemail. The phone rang in the office of Cynthia Bryant, who had just moved to Austin from Corpus. She'd gotten funding for a juvenile justice project. She ultimately, I think, went on to the faculty of UT Law, it seems to me. And so the phone rang, and I was on the second floor office, and there was nobody around but me, and her phone rang in her office. And so I thought, you know what, I'll take a message, for her. And it was Jerry Benedum. He was the first assistant city attorney. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know anybody in the legal community in Corpus Christi except Tony Canales by reputation. And so he was Jerry Benedum calling Cynthia to see if she wanted to go to lunch. He was in town on business. And I said, well, she's not here, but I'm looking for a job in Corpus, and I'll have lunch with you. He said, okay. So we went and had lunch. He asked for my resume, and that's how I got my first job. So fortunately, I was able to get a job in the area where I was going to be close to my mother.
Well, unfortunately, you're a hustler who's not embarrassed to ask for help or for what you need. And not everybody knows how to do that or knows that they're allowed to do that.
Yes, that's true. I mean, I would say that I guess ultimately, we're looking further down my life career path. I was just not afraid of a no answer, and not that long ago, I had a woman, Dr. Nancy Vera. She's president of the AFT in Corpus Christi. She was doing a video that she said was going to be shown to the students at CCISD. And she said, I want them to see that these kids will be seeing this and they'll know that what is possible to achieve with self-esteem and self-confidence. And I said, Dr. Vera, I am the world's worst example of self-confidence or self-esteem. I've always not been that person, but I think what I have is belief in myself. And so you call it hustling. I call it believing in myself. But ultimately, it allows you to take a step that others might be unwilling to take. And of course, later on, I learned from, like I've mentioned earlier, one of my mentors, Lena Guerrero, that you don't leave without the check. And I also learned as far as for as a candidate when you're fundraising. And just don't be afraid to ask for support. People like to be asked, but if the answer is no, it's not necessarily no forever. So I guess I developed a thick skin for starters, but the basis of it all was believing in myself.
Well, I would imagine that because someone helped you, when you were asked for help by others who were up and coming, you also said yes to them.
Oh, yes, of course. It's like paying it forward or sideways or whatever. It's that I achieved a lot of things, but it wasn't by myself.
Mm-hmm.
The professor from East Texas State who lent me the money to go to law school, Dr. Orlean Klingscales. And, she believed in me, and we didn't have a written promissory note or anything. She just said, if you die, the debt is forgiven, or if I die, the debt is forgiven. So, I mean, I couldn't have done it financially without her.
Uh-huh.
And that's just one example of many people who have helped me along the way.
I mean, that's an amazing example that your professor let you money to go to law school. I don't think you hear those stories very often. I'm sure any lawyer listening to this is like, oh, what a bad idea that there was no formal signed contract. But I'm really glad that helped you.
Yeah, and I paid her every penny.
That's good. You didn't wait just till she died and then said, oh, forgive
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, when I was sworn in as a county court at law judge, she was present.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So speaking of, in 1985, you became the first Latina judge in Nueces County, and the first Hispanic female county court of law judge in Texas. And that seems very progressive for that time. So how was that received and celebrated?
Well, actually, the appointment process was kind of strange a little bit. Robert's Rules of Order were not followed by the Commissioner's Court, but that's okay because they voted right 3-2. Somebody get to fill a vacancy in the Nueces County Court at Law number 3. That sense of pride that my community had was amazing, but my world was so small. I had never been involved in politics, really. I had been asked by a friend of mine, the husband or the boyfriend at the time of a really good friend of mine from Mobstown, to help him serve on his steering committee. He had been appointed county commissioner, and now he was having to run. He had an opponent. And so, of course, I said yes, but I didn't even know what a steering committee did. And but of course I did it because of my friendship and my fondness for them. And so we go to these meetings, it'd be after 5:00. And so it turned out I was the only one on the steering committee that had probably gone to college or even much less, having a law degree. And so they would start going off on rabbit trails, and I'd say, but we were talking about this. And so I'd bring them back, and then another rabbit trail. And so, but we were talking about this. I wanted to get home. And I walked out of there as chair of the steering committee. you know, now what? So that was my first ever exposure. But even then, I didn't really do much, but other than kind of keep that flow of the committee going, it seems to me. And so when I got appointed, it was like I said, a 3-2 vote. One of the commissioners told me that I should forget about being a judge because the job of a judge was too stressful for a woman. And so I said, okay, well, that's one vote out of five, and actually, I had sought not appointment to a newly created county court at law that went to one of my colleagues who served for many years, uh, um, James Klager, but he had been, an elected legislator and all. He had a lot of connections that I didn't have. But I had the right connection, who was that friend of mine, Richard Borchard, who was in the commissioner's court. But still, that slot went to him. 30 days later, Mark White appointed my predecessor, Joaquin Villarreal, to the 347th District Court. And that opened up another county court of law appointment. And, that's when I made my pitch again. And the deciding vote was the county judge. And when I said about Robert Rules of Order, you have a motion, you have a discussion, or after a second, and then you take a vote. Well, one commissioner nominated the assistant county attorney, Angie Andrews, and Commissioner Borchard nominated me, and it was seconded by another commissioner. And then they voted rather than like doing it one and then after the other. And I've always felt that the county judge, Robert Barnes, made his decision like when you're at the restaurant, you have to tell the waitress how you want your eggs. I mean, like, okay, I have to make a decision. I've always believed that he made the decision right then and there. So it was a squeaker, 3-2 vote. So, like I said, my community, from Robstown, that's where I'm from originally, and the Mexican American Democrats in Nueces County, it was jubilation, But I didn't see that I was the first one in Texas until sometime later when I started getting my feet wet. I looked around and I said, "Oh, okay, this is a first," But at the time, there was no like, "Okay, let's just see what I can do." It was like, "I'm going to give it a shot."
I love all of these details and names in your story because it shows me that you're still so grateful for everyone that was with you. There are some people that I'm sure we both know, and their story is, well, I worked hard and this is what I deserved. And that's not you at all. You give shout outs to every person going back from your start.
Well,
and I love that.
Every July 1st, which is when I took office, July 1st, 1985, I went to thank each of the 3 people on the Commissioner's Court who voted for me, to thank them for the opportunity that they gave me. Once I got elected in my own right, where I had the first time out that I was on the ballot, I didn't get an opponent, so that was easy. The second time I was on the ballot, I had an opponent who was very, very good opponent, very strong opponent, and I was really, running scared. I was sick every morning. I had diarrhea and throwing up every morning because I used to be a librarian. It did not prepare me for the tussle and of politics, but he gave me a good run for my money, and so the next time that I was going to be on the ballot, I chose to run against an incumbent district judge, and I won.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it sounds like all of this sort of traumatic experience is steeling you for the most traumatic thing you can do, which is to go through a confirmation process to be a federal judge. You were nominated by President Clinton, and the process took almost 3 years before you were confirmed and could start serving as a judge. So can you tell us about that process?
Okay. When I was nominated, it was in August. I got the call in August of 95. And because I had been, it kind of goes further back. I had been recommended along with a gentleman who was a state district judge or criminal district judge from Harris County. And so I had just taken my oath of office of the 148, January 1, 1995. when I learned from Jorge Rangel, who had been the ABA on the ABA Select Committee on the Federal Judiciary, that he had been asked to submit his name for the position in Brownsville. I saw him 3 weeks into 85 rather. I'm sorry. It would have been 95. I took my oath of office as state district judge, January 1, 95. I ran into him 3 weeks later. He said that he had just gotten off the phone with talking to somebody at the White House and to inform him that he was withdrawing his name from consideration for the position in Brownsville. So I called my friend Paula. She was always an amazing resource. Uh, she also graduated from UT Law, practicing law in Corpus. And so I said, Paula, what do you think? I just took this position, and it was a contested race. Hotly contested. An incumbent of many years, and Margarito Garza, and so she said, well, why don't you call Frank Burney in San Antonio? Frank was the son of Cecil Burney, a longtime Democratic activist lawyer in Corpus. And I didn't know Frank. I didn't even really know Cecil Burney either. But so I called Frank Burney, and he said, well, it's not going to be the senior. Oh, Henry B. Gonzalez was the senior member of the Texas congressional delegation, the Democratic delegation. He said, well, it's not going to be Henry B. that makes a decision. He's appointed lawyers, congressmen within each respective district in Texas to vet potential nominees. So he said, and Henry B. listens to very few people, but one of them is Tom Frost. So I said, well, okay. And I asked a friend of mine, Mike Carroll, who's president of Frost Bank branch in Uptown Corpus. I asked him if he could introduce me to Tom Frost. So he called me right back and he said, yes, he's waiting for your call. It was like, and so I called Tom Frost and he said, well, can you come talk to me at San Antonio? So I said, yes, sir, I'll be there whenever that was. That it was a Wednesday. And so he said, well, who in Corpus can I talk to about you? And I said, well, I don't know. I just finished a very high profile contested race, and I had the support of a lot of people in the business community. So he said, well, okay, I'll call you back. Well, so as I was leaving the Frost Bank building in downtown San Antonio, I think, should I try to talk to Frank Herrera, plaintiff's attorney, big Democrat, active in Democratic politics. So I had known who he was, and he knew who I was, but we would never really, not even share a drink together, much less dinner together at MABA meetings or Mexican American Bar Association meetings. And so I thought, well, nothing ventured, nothing gained. So I called him. Oh, and he always had, when I would see him at these bar meetings, the state bar, Mexican American bar meeting, he always had Elma Salinas Ender with him. Seems like, they were really tight. And she was the first Latina state district judge in Texas, appointed by Mark White when Mark White was governor. And so I was thinking, well, if anybody has a shot at his support, it would be her, because she was a state district judge before I was, And but I thought, like I said, nothing ventured, nothing gained. So we'd always say hello to each other, and we were cordial, and we went on, passing cross paths. Well, I walk into his office. First of all, I call him. Yes, he'll take a meeting. And then I walk into his office and he falls into my arms like a long lost brother. And I'm thinking, well, this is interesting. And so he had just gotten back the day before from a Texas Day briefing on Monday of that same week. So it was Monday, Texas Day briefing in D.C. He was back in San Antonio the following day. And I walk into his office on Wednesday. He said, yes, there were 5 women who were being talked about for this position in Brownsville. And I think you have the best shot. And it was Elma Salinas Ender, Norma Cantu, who is now on the faculty of UT, or I don't know whether she still is, but she had been with MALDEF, and he was very active in MALDEF. Crisanta Guerra, an attorney from Brownsville, and Linda Yanez, who had been appointed by Ann Richards to the 13th Court of Appeals. and she had been on the Clinton Transition Committee. And Norma Cantu was working in the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Education in Clinton's administration. So I thought, well, I'll have a shot. But, he said, those are the five, and I think you have the best shot. He says, but the committee's going to be meeting soon. You need to get up to D.C. to visit with them. So I followed orders. I, reached out, and I got a chance to visit with all of them. Well, Henry B. wasn't available, but Kika de la Garza was on the committee. I didn't meet with him, but I met with his legislative director or chief of staff probably. And then Ken Benson, Lloyd Benson's nephew, Gene Green from the congressman from Houston, Sheila Jackson Lee, who didn't keep her appointment with me, and then Greg Laughlin, who went on to become a Republican in the next election cycle. And so apparently I was told by someone from Brownsville that I was the only one who was interested in the position who actually went to D.C. to lobby personally. And you know what I owe that to, having the chutzpah? My congressman, Solomon Ortiz. Oh, yeah, because Solomon Ortiz was also on that committee. He was the congressman from Robstown. But I had interned for him 1 month. It was a 1-month internship in 1984, the summer after my mother had passed away. And so I learned all the ins and outs of the Hill, the tunnels and all that stuff. So when I was making my pitch, I made a pitch to Gene Green on his way to a vote. I had my speech down to 5 minutes, or less. And, I got recommended to Henry B. and this gentleman from Houston as an alternate. And then my name was submitted. I was nominated, but I was nominated August of 95. Well, I learned the hard way in August of 96 that the nomination is only good for the 2-year congressional term in which it's submitted. Didn't I feel like a fool when I found out that, oh, you mean, and the Congress recessed early. They were counting on Clinton not getting reelected. Well, he did get reelected. And I, Rosanna Dana, assumed naively that I was going to be the nominee the next congressional term. Well, it wasn't the case. It wasn't something that was going to be a given. So I really had to scramble and, shore up support to get re-nominated, because the lawyers from the Valley wanted somebody from the Valley. The lawyers from Houston wanted this one, not the lawyers, the congressman from Houston wanted one particular man, and I became the compromise, somewhere in the middle. That's where I wound up getting the nomination the first time. Well, by the second time when Clinton got reelected and he was sworn in, my friends, the Democrats, smelled blood in the water. And so they were starting to push for their recommendation to be nominated instead of me. And of course, the Republicans, I couldn't count on their help for it. So ultimately, I did get renominated in probably February of 90, whatever that year is, 96. But it wasn't until, a couple of years later that I finally had a chance for a hearing. So it was about a 3-year wait, and a lot of drama in between.
Based on the initial 5 names of the women that you listed, do you think that they were looking for a Latina at the time to fill that spot?
Yes. But I don't know who it was that spoke at Texas Day briefing. I don't have any idea who that was and why my name was one of those, because I certainly didn't even know that there was such a thing as a Texas Day briefing, much less be lobbying to be, thrown in, my name being thrown in. So this was happening without my knowledge at all.
And so you end up being the compromise. But did you know, even as part of that compromise, you were making history?
No. I was so caught up with all of the emotion, the highs and the lows, like finding out that my nomination had lapsed. I was just undone. But and then just, I had a job. I was a single mother. My nephew Santiago came to live with me back in 85 when I first became a judge, and where I soon learned that it's a whole lot easier to be a judge than it is to be a parent. But I was not, all of that was just it. Like I said, I had a job. I was a single parent, and then I was politicking, and then came the critical question: should I apply for a place on the ballot? Because the primary now was going to be was starting up, and how does it look that I'm pursuing the federal judgeship at the same time that I'm asking the voters to consider me? So I had to deal with, okay, how do I keep people from filing their application to run in that primary
Mm-hmm.
on anticipating that I'm going to be confirmed because it was not a given. As a matter of fact, there was one state district judge from Tarrant County who was nominated the first time when I was, and when it came time to make a decision to whether to apply for a place on the ballot in Tarrant County, he didn't. He assumed he was going to be renominated, and guess what? He was not renominated. So, like I said, there was just so many, you know, uh, moving parts to things, and I was just mucho estrés, you know. so, uh, uh, so I didn't have any idea that I was going to be making history. I was just trying to keep going and not give up. One of my brothers told me once, "Well, you knew what you were getting into," and I've thought of that so many times, and I thought, "No, I didn't."
Well, I think it's hilarious that you started out by saying you wouldn't describe yourself with having a lot of self-confidence because everything you have done and accomplished shows that belief in yourself is your self-confidence. You could not have done all of this
Okay, well,
and made those connections without having that.
okay. I once I said that to Dr. Vera, I looked it up. You can take the girl out of the library, but you can't take the library out of the girl. I looked it up, and there is a difference. Belief in yourself is how what propels you to do what you do. Self-confidence and self-esteem is the perception of others about your actions and what you say and what you do. So it's the belief is internal. The self-confidence and self-esteem is the projection that others see,
Mm-hmm.
see about you.
Well, knowing you for just a short time, I see that about you. So you should have some self-confidence and self-esteem because I'm going to send it back to you.
Oh, you're so kind. Thank you. Well, like I told you, after I knew we were going to be doing this, and I looked at your resume, and I thought, wow, I want to be her when I grow up.
That is too kind and so wrong. So you're a single mom, you're a fancy judge, you are actively getting confirmed to be a fancy federal judge, and you're still able to spend a lot of time with civic and professional organizations, even founding the Mexican American Bar of the Coastal Bend. Which one of these organizations meant the most to you?
Okay. I had professional organizations, which was the Mexican American Bar
Mhm.
Association. I had when I got involved, when I got appointed to the county court of law. I mean, I had to develop a political base, so it was the became the person who reinstated or brought back to life the Women's Political Caucus in the Coastal Bend, because Lena Guerrero had done me such a solid by including me in that candidate training seminar. I felt like I wanted to do that for others. As a matter of fact, I came up with this idea of doing a seminar and how to get appointed to boards and commissions, because that's where the pipeline starts. And so it was I wanted the Mexican American Bar Association because the Corpus Christi Bar Association, all you saw was these silk stocking or silk, yeah, I guess they call it silk stock lawyers, and they were all civil defense. Very few plaintiffs' lawyers participated in the bar. And actually, Doug Chavez had told me early on when I was in the DA's office, she said, you should get involved in bar activities. And I did. It's kind of crazy how that all happened, but I realized that it was important for Mexican American lawyers to be involved because, especially, I mean, I learned from myself that, the ones with the money to contribute are the ones that are going to be those firms. But I didn't want to be that person who only showed up when it was campaign time,
Mhm.
and so I felt like I wanted other Mexican-American lawyers to have a connection if they were ever going to pursue a career, well, even just professional advancement, that kind of thing. Because you have to remember, I was licensed in 1977, and I'll give you a story about what happened to Doug Chavez and his partner, Rudy Gonzalez, who also graduated from UT Law. They straight out of law school. Doug got the highest grade on the bar exam when he took it, and he used to say he loved law school. I said, "You're crazy, man." But Rudy and Doug had started working for the biggest law firm in Corpus, Clayburgh, Dyer, Redford at the time. I think that's what it was. When they decided to go on their own, and see, Doug had the HEB book. He had those clients, and they were going to go with him. He and Rudy went to. It was only recently that Rudy Gonzalez told me the story. They went to all of the banks in Corpus Christi to ask for a $50,000 loan so that they could start their law practice together. They got turned down by everybody except the bankers at Citizens Bank, which is a minority-owned bank. That was the only entity that would lend them money. So, like I said, when I was licensed in 77. I mean, it was not a given that you would be welcomed by the big firms. I mean, it just about every Mexicano hung out their own shingle, and I was like I said, single mother or single head of household. I didn't have a husband to help me financially, and I didn't have what it took, the courage that it took to do it on my own. To hang that shingle on my own. So that's why. The city of Corpus Christi job was perfect for me, perfect timing. And then I was recruited as an assistant county attorney, and then recruited as an assistant DA. And so then finally I said, okay, it's time to, cut the cord. And I went into private practice, but I still needed a source of income so I wouldn't feel overwhelmed. And that's why I started teaching at Del Mar College, and I taught there for 4 years that I was in private practice before I became county court of law judge. So I always needed to have a safety net.
What advice would you give to attorneys who want to follow in your footsteps?
Well, I'll learn to take no for an answer. I mean, if somebody says no, just say okay, but don't not go back, because things change. That's what they say about politics, that the opera's not over till the fat lady sings. You never know where the dust is who's gonna be standing when the dust settles. So just consider yourself as a person who, when you're seeking for financial support, see yourself not as somebody who's going to be for sale, but what you're asking for from the community by their vote or their small contributions or larger contributions it's an investment in good government. And don't be shy about approaching strangers. I remember Wayne Stockseth was the owner of Power Equipment, big business in Corpus, had a lot of employees, and my brother was a welder for him, in his shop. And so I called him up, just cold call, and I said, I'm running for county court at law, and I'd like to have lunch with you. So he had lunch with me, and I asked him, I don't know for how much money. I didn't know. You're not supposed to ask a contributor for less than what they normally give, but I didn't know that yet. So I just asked him for like $3,000. I just picked that number out of thin air. He gave me like $500, but that's okay. I just got over the fear of asking, or helped me get over the fear of asking.
What's next for you?
Well, I'm having a wonderful time being here in the Austin area with my 2 grandsons. Santiago has 2 beautiful sons and a wonderful wife who I adore. So it's to finally, being able to spend time with, I've always said that Santiago paid the highest price for my success, because, he was 9 years old when he came to live with me. And all of a sudden I was schlepping him around all these campaign barbecues. So much so that he said one time, he was still not a teenager yet. He says, how come it's always rice and beans, chicken and barbecue chicken and rice and beans? He said, how come they never serve broccoli? He went on to graduate from the Culinary Institute of America in Hyde Park. But what I'm saying, when you say what's next for me, I feel like I've done a lot, but I really haven't spent the time with family. And my friends are passing away. My family, I'm only I have one brother who's still living, and I just want to have that connection that really, that when you die, they're going to be there, or when you're dying, rather. A lot of people will show. I know there's going to be a lot of people at my funeral, especially if it was an open casket, because they're going to be there to make sure I'm dead. All the people who's sent to prison or their families. So I think it's just basically enjoying life, traveling, hopefully a little bit more. But I am involved with a group of women lawyers from Houston. Danny Sages, who's in the general counsel's office with Academy, she is she started something called the Latina Lawyers Network. That's what it is. So I'm working on a project with them, and Celia Bailly from also from the Valley. She's from Brownsville, working for I guess she's VP for litigation now for KBR. She's got Somos Latina Lawyers. An entity that puts on seminars and stuff, and so it's fun now. Now is my time to enjoy myself and doing things like that, and spending more time with my husband Eddie Knable, my long-suffering husband Eddie Knable, and our doggie Mia. Her name is Mia. She's a mini schnauzer, a teacup, but that's her name when she's good. When she's bad, her name is Tuya.
My sister has a cat also named Mia that came to us one Christmas morning at my parents' house, and she and I were living together at the time. And to this day, I feel like my dad found Mia and put her in the garage so that we could find her. She's been our Christmas miracle for a decade, and my dad has never confessed, but we know that Mia, she's too fancy. Mia is this beautiful cat that already had her shots and stuff. We know that he got us Mia, but to this day, he will not confess.
He will not admit to it.
One day, maybe. So we share a Mia.
Yes, okay.
But I like that. I'm going to tell her that when Mia's bad, she's Tuya. Well, I'm so glad that now you'll have time, it sounds like, for some more balance. Though I have to say, you must have been one heck of a mom that you raised a child that requested broccoli.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, I think
Well done.
in spite of his the kind of life he had with me, and then to complicate things, I'll just have to tell you this. He said one point, he said, I wish I had a brother. I wish I had an older brother. I'm thinking, well, where am I going to get one? So I decided to get an exchange student from Spain, and we were just talking about it yesterday that when Jose Maria was there, and it was so good for him to have somebody else in the house but me. And then a couple of years later, we got one from Switzerland. So it was, I tried to do the best I could to raise him and to respect, his, himself as well as others. And I think he's a wonderful dad and I'm hoping he's got a wonderful husband. From all accounts, it sounds like he is, because that's what his wife deserves. She's a wonderful woman too. So I'm really happy every time we come. But I like being in Houston too now. I didn't used to. It had a lot of bad memories from the time before law school. But there's a really great women who go to the Y for different classes that I go to, also real smart. They're very interested in social activities or like the arts, book clubs, theater, movies, all that. So it's something that I just love.
Well, good. Well, thank you so much for being here. I have loved all of your stories. I love how much you love all the people that helped you.
Oh, of course. Even the ones who, that didn't
Even
know
the
that they
ones
were
who
helping me, like my opponent for county court at law. I had to thank him later. I said, "You really got me ready for the next race." So, I always have told Santiago, I consider him my son, that you can learn from every experience, even a bad one.
That's right. And it sounds like even if you had some bad ones, you overcame them with grace and with this glorious career and this wonderful family.
Thank you. You're very kind. I want to say thank you so much for what you do for the bar, the advancement of the profession. All the things that I saw on your resume are really amazing, and we're lucky to have you.
Well, thank you so much for being here with us today. And thanks all of you, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.